that we collectively, state system, we will, are not preparing young people for all the work in terms of are they ready for mock interviews, are they ready to be interviewed, are they ready to actually go and sell themselves in employment situations, so that's one thing. Secondly, that classic thing of how can young people get experience if they don't have any work? They're too young to get experience, so the idea of giving young people experience all the while they work through training or through work experience is quite important. And thirdly, we do recognise that at times there can be a lack of coordination between us. We may well find that what we've got is one young person working with 3 agencies. We're all working with them, we don't know we're working with them, and we're all doing CVs. So maybe a coordination between ourselves would be more beneficial for everyone. Thank you.
We call them physical barriers around isolation, particularly in Wiltshire, that you can't get somewhere, you can't necessarily get a bus fare, you can't necessarily get anywhere to find out information or engage with services. There are social barriers right the way across society, access to agencies. Looking at everyone coming in the room earlier, everyone sat next to somebody they knew. Imagine, and we're group of professionals, this is really confident, ideally. Imagine yourself as a neat young person walking into an agency to go and try and find out something, and the barriers, just physical, to how people look, to the presentation of the place and how you go in there. So there's physical and social and all sorts of barriers to engaging with any services anymore. We also highlighted maybe perceived perception that young people may have of support providers, whether what the information they have is relevant to them, whether they truly engage with them and understand a young person's needs and their situation, and whether language is appropriate, whether having a range of people making interventions in your life is necessarily the right approach. We also discussed in that light that there is a perceived expectation, perhaps among young people, that you have to go into voluntary work, and you have to volunteer, and you have to get work experience, and that sometimes you're being told that by somebody who patently has never had to do that. And that was an issue that came up, that we are providing information to a generation when we have experience of having work and not having to volunteer necessarily. So there's a gap there. So there is a fair amount of provision and a need to build emphasis on positive relationships with those young people and whichever agency is providing that. And last but not least, there was that providers need to work very much together right from early years in school to ensure proper integrated provision and build strong, positive, ongoing relationships with those young people. They don't stop at 16, they don't stop at 18, and they don't start at 16 and under. And build work with their communities and their family and their peer groups. And look very carefully at who's providing work, intervention, work, information and intervention in school. And that is realistic and makes a fair understanding of the wider world for young people. So those were our 3 barriers and issues. We talked quite a bit about confusions around benefits and the problems that have been caused by the removal of the EMA. We talked about young people's expectations and understanding of what's out there, very similar to what was said just a moment ago, and the general state of the economy anyway. But what we came round to was probably the single biggest issue was communication, and that was communication between agencies, between all the people who are here today, and the realisation that we were actually having conversations on one table between half a dozen people who haven't had that opportunity before, and how important that was, firstly, so that you know, maybe a bit more joined up working between the agencies that are still here. We felt that there was problem with communication between agencies and young people, and that the situation with connections, it was felt, has increased that problem, and especially about getting accessible information to young people. And we also talked about the fact that it's really important that we spend some time listening to what the people themselves say, not just about what we as experts assume to know.
And some of the stuff we came up with was pretty much the same as everyone else really. Transport being a massive issue, literacy skills. We have seen a high percentage of people with real low literacy and numeracy skills. Also as well the home environment, the culture they come from. A lot of young people especially ones I meet, if their families don't work, then they don't really see the concept of it themselves, and sometimes they feel that benefits, they can get more money from benefits instead of actually working, so they do the maths there sometimes. Some of the other stuff we spoke about was the importance of a key worker. We were talking about having a key worker, making sure they're getting supported correctly and really pushing them to do the things that they should be doing. Sometimes it does take, as Chloe was saying, that actually going to pick them up from their house sometimes, because transport is a big issue, making sure they have that there, the access as well. A few other things is also the biggest one we found was their communication. Teaching them that texting is not the best way to say you're not coming into a placement sometimes. And also as well, when they don't see a number they recognise, they don't answer the phone. And also as well, changing their voicemail, because a lot of them, their voicemails are not the best ones to have, especially if you're applying for jobs. Also, them not being aware of the amount of grants that are available for them to go back into education if they like. A lot of them hear the word education and go back into college and think it's going to cost them the earth and they can't do it. Or if we have single parents, they don't think about the part-time courses that are available to them. So those are the main things that we came up with.
But the main things we opted for were transport, as everyone else. Particularly around just access to opportunities and the need for mobility. And we sort of recognise that the elderly portion of society recognise that mobility, particularly mobility needs, especially young people. And there's a specific point, I think, about the cost of car insurance, which may not affect specifically some of the real sort of entrenching young people, but there's a whole lot of young people that can't move on because they simply can't afford to empower themselves. So that's an interesting one. There's a big theme around strategy, and we thought in terms of both young people having the right strategy to sort of make the right sort of stepping stones through life, and that probably starts at quite an early age, really, and that's a mindset, through to strategic coordination of services and this communication between them, coordinating it. And there is a Chippenham strategy task group already in place, a little club there, so anyone wants to be part of that, that's an open house, but that's a work in progress. That will become a youth advisory group, and my view is that the youth employment is obviously a feature on that agenda. So, there's clear examples around that, where I think it's sort of 3 events, and I've talked to, for example, local farmers, where local farmers say we can't get enough skilled hands in the industry locally, and yet Wiltshire Council of those independent farmers, you know what I mean? And then that leads to the transport issue, how do you get there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and no one can drive and no one wants to get up. So, but there are opportunities around engineering in the same way, and also like the specific examples helping around the upholstery, so employer locally does upholstery and employed 160 people from Poland, and then it's deactivated because they simply couldn't find the skill here. So there's a planning issue there between skills training and employment sectors. And finally, we just came back to this need for person-centred, needs-led responses to individual circumstances, and the recognition that some of these young people, certainly what I'm learning in my shared work at RES, then it's really quite complex. We've got young people here who all take part in whatever project or certain program, things that are there, and there's some young people that really find it hard to get out of the house, and that's quite a complex issue, and it's quite a hard job, so it's recognising that.